It's like Grease on LSD and roller skates. It's
Xanadu.
That's right. We watched the 1980 Rainbow Fever Dream Xanadu. So grab your finger paints and ecstasy. It's time for the inaugural episode of Raspberry Fields Forever. Come on, let's pick these berries. Join us on a journey as we frolic through fields of filmmaking follies. Join us on this week's episode of Raspberry Fields Forever.
You suck.
What's up, everyone? My name is Jesse Rodden. With me, as always, is my co-host, Kieran Gibbs. Kieran, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, having sat through a few cinematic endeavors, as we'll call them. I'm a little worse for wear as far as mentally powered, but otherwise than that, I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I actually feel like I'm a bit of a glutton for punishment because I watched this movie twice now. Once a couple weeks ago when we were first talking about the podcast, and then once earlier today just to kind of refresh my memory before we went on air for the first time ever. And let's just say it did not get better the second time around. To anybody out there who is thinking about watching the movie, don't worry, I watched it twice so you don't have to. Which actually brings me to why we decided to start this podcast. You see, we're both filmmakers and we love to watch movies, good movies, bad movies, it doesn't matter. And we believe that you can learn just as much about filmmaking from a bad movie as you can a good movie. That being said, we call this podcast Raspberry Fields Forever because each year at the Golden Raspberry Awards, which is basically the opposite of the Oscars, 10 movies are nominated for Worst Picture of the Year. We've decided to watch each of these movies and give them their own individual episodes where we take the time to discuss exactly what went wrong and see if the film that won the Golden Raspberry that year truly deserved it, or maybe one of the other nominations were more deserving of the title. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
And cinema also acts as a perfect time capsule because what was considered bad then might not be considered so bad now. And some stuff that might have just been flat out critically panned has some ironic merit to it. So without further ado, do you want to move on to our next segment there, boss?
Why, I thought you'd never ask. Yes, absolutely, buddy. Our first segment of the night is called God Save the Screen. Save the screen! Oh! So, in God Save the Screen, this segment is all about the plot, the meat and potatoes of the story. We want to discuss the movie from beginning to end, and we'll probably jump around on occasion just because we get excited about what we really want to talk about. We'll try to keep it reined in as much as possible. Kieran, do you want to start us off here?
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah, go ahead.
You said how you spent what was it $6 to watch this movie?
$8.
$8. Okay. I think I spent about 16 because I fell asleep twice in my first two attempts trying to watch this. So the beginning is still a little hazy to me. But from what I recall, there's just this giant blank mural, correct?
Well, no. You got to start off before that, though, because Sonny I guess it was, would you consider Sonny or Kira the main character of this?
Well, I think Kira was advertised as the lead because they wanted the star power of Olivia Newton-John. But I don't think they knew how to mold a movie around a fully developed female character. So they just had like a quote unquote fully developed male character. So Sonny is the de facto protagonist. Kira just kind of happens to him.
In the beginning, though, Sonny is drawing and he rips up some paper and then throws it out the window all dramatically as he's like, well, I guess this is it. And then the paper flies almost like the beginning of American Beauty or the feather in
Forrest Gump. Yeah. I do recall this film is chock full of some computer graphics that I'm really excited to talk about. But yes, I do recall that portion at the beginning. But the thing that kind of jumped out to me was the blank canvas where all just these quote unquote muses started showing up. That's just these really, really good dancing women in some very like silk robes. And you just kind of don't understand where they came from, but you're glad they're here because who doesn't love Olivia Newton-John?
Oh, yeah. And who doesn't love the Universal backlight? Because that was totally shot on the Universal backlight. Let's be honest.
Oh, yeah, totally. The thing I really like about this movie is that it was made in the late 1970s, way after like the traditional studio system, like, you know, the flicks of the 40s and 50s, like that kind of style of filmmaking is kind of going away and they're more like realistic films being made. But holy crap, if this doesn't feel like a big like machine studio picture. And I kind of enjoy it because it's real big.
Going back to the mural itself, the mural ends up coming to life and they have this wonderful dance number and stuff like that. Olivia Newton-John is introduced and stuff. And somehow they start turning into beams of light and then traveling across the world and even doing the hustle in front of the Hollywood sign, which immediately sold me on this movie. I was like, even if this isn't great, it's going to be hilarious. And I did. I chuckled really hard at that point.
Well, I kind of signed up for this movie because something important to kind of notate around the making of it is it was made in collaboration with the group, the Electric Light Orchestra. And I have it multiple times in my notes here. Electric Light Orchestra is so dope. I must have had that written like 4 times. But the music is a really big factor in this because this otherwise it's kind of held together with like duct tape and a prayer.
For some reason, Olivia Newton-John's character just decides to like stay in Hollywood and runs into a guy and just randomly kisses him, who is our main character in Sunny. And like, she just like roller skates. How she got a pair of roller skates, I don't know. She must have stolen them because she didn't come out of the painting with them.
Something about this movie, I feel like it was either a big missed opportunity or maybe there was just this big monopoly because I'm not fully aware of the roller skate market, is it feels like an ad for roller skating.
It really does.
Just because that is the de facto transportation for everybody. I saw like maybe like 4 cars.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Exactly. And then, we'll get into like convenient props coming in and out of nowhere and stuff. The romantic skating scene and then the, let's go on a shopping spree scene were just like completely off the wall out there and interesting to say the least. I wouldn't say it was necessarily entertaining, but just to say that, oh God, they fucking went there with it is just hilarious to me.
I don't quite remember if this was right after he met her or at the next scene where he meets her again, but he proceeds to like go on this chase that's like a Doc Brown, Marty McFly style thing where he just kind of just plows through civilization. And Sonny, this is the name of the main male character. It's played by Michael Beck, who was in the Warriors before this. And
Warriors come out to play. Yeah, I mean, that's really the only other thing I've ever seen that guy in.
Yeah, precise. If you go on his IMDb page, he's been working steadily in nothing you've ever heard of. Props to him. He's working, and I'm glad that he was able to maintain that and that he made this film.
Yeah, and then let's not forget the greatness that is Mr. Gene Kelly.
Dude, that we'll get to him. We'll get to him. I'm excited, but he's plowing through this like park kind of area. It's meant to be in Hollywood, so it's very, very touristy and naturey and sunny. And he walks past this girl with a moped, asks if he can borrow it, and she said something along the lines of, "As long as you come back with it, sweetie," just because he's so darn cute.
Yeah.
Then he proceeds to drive that moped off a mountain, and we never see that girl again.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and also those ladies were both on mopeds. So theoretically, that moped was neither one of theirs because they're both sitting on mopeds. So yeah, they just let that guy steal somebody else's moped. It was great. It's fantastic. And then okay. So, and then from there we go to, she leads him to an abandoned, what ends up becoming Xanadu. They said it was actually a place. Gene Kelly actually makes a comment in the film that it was a place that used to host wrestling. And actually in California, that place, before it was actually in that movie, used to hold wrestling events. So it was just a little bit of nod to old Hollywood there. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but saw that in the trivia section on IMDb.
Did you think that Gene Kelly would bullshit you? Because that's a little bit offensive if you ask me there, bud.
Right. Well, he also mentions that his house used to belong to a famous actor from the silent movie era. And I'm like, oh, really?
Let's get into Gene Kelly now. Because after we meet Sonny, he works at I don't even know if this is an actual place because it doesn't feel like the people who wrote this ever actually had to work a day in their lives because they didn't understand how like goods are exchanged or how like jobs work because Sonny works for like a company that paints album covers for like record stores, which I thought they had printers in the 80s.
Well, and it seems like it's also a music studio as well. It's a music studio / where they do the art / where it just seems like it's a whole production thing. So to me, it seems like he almost works for like Universal Records, something like that. And he's just like on the back lot painting stuff, but they don't really ever tell you that. So it's just hanging there as to like, oh, he paints for this big conglomerate, but there's no real telling you as to what it is.
And then there's this boss character who keeps threatening to fire him. And then Sonny is just a complete and total jerk off. And he doesn't fire him because, again, this was written by a person who doesn't know how business works. But anywho, he leaves his place of work in a gloomy mood because he has to paint album covers all day. Poor him. And he runs into this like admiral looking dude on the beach playing a clarinet. Gene Kelly is on the beach in multiple portions of this film, and he is always in a suit.
Yeah, like a cardigan and a scarf. Like it's always something, and a fedora.
He looks at least a bit seamany. Seamany is not a word I thought I'd use today.
Seamany.
No, he looks navally. That sounds worse somehow.
Both of them sound dirty.
He has a very military marine aesthetic going about him, but he has a clarinet, which he clearly is like pantomiming, but it's still Gene Kelly. And it's not a great movie, bud, but anytime I see Gene Kelly on screen, it just makes me happy because he has this infectious energy that's just so seems genuine, but it's clearly like, it feels like your grandma, but like you forget all the racist things she said before.
I see what you're saying though. Yeah. Gene Kelly just has that dad quality about him, you know?
It's a really calming presence, and I really enjoy it in the film. When he enters the like musical portion of it, that's what Gene Kelly's known for. Singing in the Rain is one of the biggest movies ever made, or not biggest movies ever made, but most notable in musical history. That is when I think the quality of it or the enjoyability of it ramps up. We don't get that in the first act for a while. We go through 2 musical numbers before we see Gene Kelly put on his dancing shoes.
Yeah, pretty much. But before we even get to the Gene Kelly part, whenever he's chasing down Olivia Newton-John and they end up getting to that abandoned warehouse. Okay, did you notice that when he follows her into the abandoned place that ends up being Xanadu, he is like looking down on her as she's roller skating, but he doesn't see her to begin with. You see him walk into frame and he's looking down, and then she appears out of nowhere. And like so that's kind of what I'm saying, is that there are several points in this movie where she just appears out of nowhere and everybody's just like, oh, hey, she's pretty.
Well, it's because she needs to be there for the plot to move forward there, Jesse. Did you expect any other justification? Keep up with the program.
I mean, I would at least, like if she's going to appear out of nowhere, at least appear out of nowhere behind him. Not just like he's looking down at her and then poof, there she is. And then no mention of it whatsoever. She did the same thing to Gene Kelly a little bit later on when we get to, the naming of Xanadu, which was a stretch to say the least.
My favorite thing about the venue you're talking about, it's an old broken down auditorium, and it's an old auditorium because it clearly used to say auditorium on the front, but then I just have it written down as Udioium because all the things have fallen off. And then there's a shot where after it clearly says Udiotium, the next day where there's no renovation whatsoever, it says Uditotium. So somebody fucked up.
So Gene Kelly's dance number, man, besides the actual like combining of the 1940s and the 1980s song, that one was pretty cool. This probably had to be the part of the movie that I enjoyed the most. It was very well shot, very well executed. I like the kind of the combining of the 1940s and what was today or in that room, in that space. There were a couple of choices that I was just a little bit thrown off by. Like at a certain point, that Gene Kelly is actually in that room and she appears in the background, and then he ends up being translucent almost like she is whenever all the furniture disappears in the room magically. I didn't really understand that portion of it, but it was interesting to say the least. The number itself was really entertaining, but it just had those points in it that I'm just like, wait, what?
Well, I think it's hilarious given the circumstances because the background of Gene Kelly's character, I believe it's Danny McGuire or something like that.
Yeah, Danny.
He used to lead a big band, back in the 40s. And that's how he has this connection with Sonny and Kira. Is Kira was around back in the 40s. Ooh, but she was the same age. How did she do that? The plot thickens and it gives me the dickens. Shout out Andre 3000.
And then he just plays the like, oh, I'm old and I don't understand how you still look the same age and you're not the same person, but I'm just an old man. So what do I know?
Well, this film is based entirely on happenstance. And the fact that like her current quote unquote flame and her old flame from the 40s would meet, that's the odds of that are very astronomical. But I'll be honest, I buy the sexual chemistry between Gene Kelly and the guy who plays Sonny a little bit more than I buy the Olivia Newton-John and the guy who plays Sonny. I cannot be bothered to remember his name right now. They have like two meet cutes, and it's totally adorable. They meet once on the beach and then once at like a boardwalk, and they're just so happy to see each other. And the way they talk is it's just this real human dialogue. And I think there was a real missed opportunity there is what I'm getting at. Anywho, they're in this abandoned auditorium and they start to have this number like Jesse was talking about. It's like half jazz and half 80s metal. And at the beginning, it gave me a headache because they have these just very jarring cuts from 1940s big band music to like what Broadway considered to be 80s metal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like it was Purple Rain before Purple Rain.
Ooh, I don't. It was a little too Hellman's to be Purple Rain to me, if you ask me.
Hellman's? You mean the like mayonnaise? Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, I've never heard it said like that before. I like that.
It was a little too theater kid. You know what I mean?
It really was.
It did blend together quite nicely. And then because after the jarring cuts start to happen, and you can hear a kind of resemblance between the numbers because it switches between a 1940s like rhythm and swing to this very pop metal-y.
Yeah, very Rod Stewart.
That's a great way to describe it. Rod Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes together and then everybody disappears who was in the musical number because, you know, that's just how musicals work. And then just on a whim, this guy who was a former band leader turned construction magnate, which how those career paths align escapes me entirely.
Well, he gave up. He lost his muse.
Shut up.
Sorry. But yeah, no, I mean, that's essentially what we're getting to. We find out that Kira's character is actually not a person. Shocker. She is a Greek muse. There are the 9 sisters, the 9 muses. And I mean, they kind of touch on it with like the 9 Sisters album and stuff like that.
It's a good thing you brought up muses because to me, the whole muse kind of archetype in this movie anyway feels like a real estate scheme. Because she only comes back to like convince them to buy an old venue. Like that's the end game. Because after this big musical number happens and we get to see Olivia Newton-John be hot.
Yeah, it's like the end of Grease.
Exactly. We also get to see quite a few talented people do like cool musical things. But anywho's Gene Kelly just agrees to buy this really dilapidated place outright without seeing the plumbing, without seeing the electricity, without seeing like if there's mold or rats or termites or anything. The power of horniness in this movie is astounding.
Yeah. Well, money's no object is what he says, you know? But yeah, I mean, we have that cool dance number where the 1940s and the 1980s end up blending together. And then she pops out of nowhere, just like she does because she's Kira. And she starts talking to Gene Kelly. And Gene Kelly's like, I think I remember you, but I don't understand because I'm an old man. She starts explaining as to what they should call the place. And she ends up quoting Kubla Khan, which is an old poem. And it talks about Xanadu, which is actually a place within the poem that is kind of like a heaven. At least that's what I was kind of getting from it. I'm not good with poetry myself and deciphering that shit. But they kind of just glance over it. They just say a couple lines from that poem, don't even describe it as a poem. How they both end up knowing the poem, they just decide to call it Xanadu because of that. And it was just very glanced over. And it's like, that's a very big plot point that's just kind of like glanced over in like 2 lines. Yeah, she is a Greek goddess, but this poem wasn't done by a Greek person. It was done by an Englishman. So like, it really doesn't even make any sense as to why that poem was brought up.
Well, it's sort of the thing where the writers knew it, and so you should know it in their estimation anyhow. Do you want to hear who wrote this?
Who wrote it?
It was Richard Christian Danis. It's anus with a D.
And Danis. I'm going to go with Danis. We're just going to go with that.
Richard Danis, Dick Danis. Oh my God.
That is a terrible joke, and I'm sure his parents knew what they were doing when they did it.
Dick Christian Danis. That's either the worst pro wrestler or the best porn star. And then Mark Reed Rubel, which sounds interesting.
Yeah. So did they write anything else besides this?
A thing called Matt Houston, O'Hara, and Crime Story. A bunch of like New Jersey grandparent stuff, I presume.
Yeah, I was about to say it's nothing that I've ever heard of before. Then they start to go into business together. I mean, this guy, Danny, is just throwing around money and just taking Sonny along for this ride for no other reason than Kira is kind of like a little bit of a connection between the two guys. And I find that super interesting that he just finds this painter and decides that he wants to make him partner 50-50 on this thing. And it's like, he doesn't know the first thing about nothing.
It feels like a metaphor for impotence.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, I don't care. I wish I had enough money to do that. Where it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna risk a lot of money on this venture that, we're gonna have like 2-3 stages and roller skating and all kinds of different stuff. And yeah, I'm gonna make this guy my partner 50-50, even though I just met him yesterday.
He also says this. I wrote this quote down. It's like being married, but without the good part. Sir, I'm about 99% confident that you have worn Michael Beck like a hat.
Yeah. So they go into business. They start figuring out, well, Kira and Sonny end up, they stay together and they're starting to fall in love. And Sonny's like trying to understand Kira's past and she's unwilling to say anything until she finally does. And, they end up looking up in the dictionary, the definition of a muse. And that's whenever she really shows her magical powers, or at least puts them on display, and everybody's like, oh, you're magic, even though we were floating in the air like in the last scene. It's fine.
Well, don't float over the portion where you just randomly go Sleeping Beauty for about 8 minutes.
Oh, you're talking about the animation?
Yeah, there's an animation sequence in the middle. You said, I cannot quite remember what you told me before we started recording, but I don't even think it was supposed to be in there.
Yeah, no. Okay. So the information that I actually found out about this was they just wanted to add another song. There was another song that needed to be added to the film. And so they didn't necessarily have the budget or the resources to be able to bring people back and shoot another whole scene. So they just decided that it would be easier just to do an animation sequence, which, I mean, honestly, for an already acid trippy movie, that a little bit of addition just kind of sent it over the top, at least in my eyes.
I feel like if you've ever seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, if you trip balls and watch Xanadu, that's how you're going to end up in the prime timeline to where you're a Super Saiyan, because I think that's the key to the universe. The key to the universe is narcotics and this piece of shit.
Oh, God. Let's see. Oh, and not to mention, I mean, we cannot skip over the roller skating sequence. I think we just completely skipped over their first date sequence, which, oh my God, this studio has to be a multi-million-dollar studio for them to be able to have all of these pyrotechnics and all of these different stage setups and stuff. How did they know how that was going to work? And how did they know without tripping over stuff and running into things that this was going to pop up here and we're going to skate and do this and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I get that it's a movie, but the suspension of disbelief has to be there. But let's be real. This guy is a painter.
Here's the thing. I hate non-diegetic singing in musicals. This is a musical. Move your lips, asshole.
Yeah.
That was my main complaint.
Well, and see, here's the problem with that, Karen. They were having so many sound issues with this entire movie. There was one point that they completely had the line said, and then she raises her head and you can see her mouth the line. It's really bad. These guys can't even get their on-set sound recorded. So it's terrible.
Yeah, half this movie is ADR. That's what I wrote down. That's how I felt personally. So everything is going so swimmingly for everybody in this movie. There's a portion where Gene Kelly has a full bottle of vintage champagne at an active construction site, and he's wearing just his best naval blazer.
Yeah, and they're having a picnic over some ladders.
It's written by people who don't understand how the world works. I feel like this movie was either way past its time or way ahead of its time. Because I feel like if it came out and framed itself as like, you know how they framed the Brady Bunch reboot, I felt like it would have killed. Like this, this is a parody. As you mentioned, he finds out that she's a muse, and then apparently, like, muses can't develop relationships with other people, and all they have to do is inspire. Which, again, what is she inspired up to this point in the plot? People to buy a plot of land? That's not art.
Yeah, and then bring two people that she's slept with together to be friends.
Oh no, I don't think she slept with them. I don't think that happened.
Really, you don't think she slept with either one of them?
Gene Kelly's not acting like a dude who smashed.
he was too much of a gentleman in the 1940s.
In 1945. And he said it like that, exactly.
Those were the days.
No, I retract that statement because Gene Kelly is just, he's a class act all around. He treats all of his ladies nicely, no matter what position. Can we cut that out?
No. That stayed in. Then she runs away and she's like, okay, I brought these two together. My job is done. I've got to leave the earth. And then he's got to be all dramatic and Kira's gone, then I'm gone. And we can't do this anymore. And I can't be this partner of yours and stuff. And then he has to just, he has to dramatically go for a skate.
That is one of my, this entire sequence, the prelude up to it even, because he's pouting on the beach in the pretty dope Hawaiian shirt. And then Gene Kelly rocks up in a wool suit with a pink shirt with the collar popped and a scarf. And it's not a beret. It's the thing that Irish fellas wear. Mm-hmm. Just floating like a G, not sitting on the rocks, walking throughout the sand. And have you ever gotten like sand in your flip-flops?
Yes, of course.
This man's wearing like wingtips.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you gotta go after her. Go find her. No direction or nothing. Just go find her.
Yeah, and it's like, don't stop until you make it home. It really was a Willy Wonka moment.
Or what's that book in Billy Madison where like, as long as you're lost, you'll always find your way home or something? With the dog.
The puppy that found its way home. That's something like that. I'm sorry, you had brought up, and I know we're getting to the end of the plot here, so I'll make this one quick. But you brought up Gene Kelly's wardrobe choices. Okay, we need to discuss Sonny's boss wardrobe choices, because when Sonny walks in to quit, he walks in and he is wearing denim on denim, like denim button-down shirt with denim jeans, and I mean, we're talking like some thick denim. You know what I'm saying? That like rock hard. Like he starched that denim, you know what I'm saying? And then he's wearing a tweed jacket with the collar popped on it.
He looks like the most fuckable uncle at the barbecue.
He is wearing that Canadian tuxedo. Like he is a Canadian tuxedo, but he's also a professor. Like he's like at Toronto U or something like that.
He Canucks and he fucks. Put that on the TikTok.
Sonny has to now skate away dramatically. And, we have just that few moments of him just like angrily skating. And then he finds the mural. This mural is giant. The fact that he doesn't know where this mural is in town is just stupid. And then we have to platform 9 3/4 this thing because he's just going to run and just skate right into it. And man, I was hoping so bad that he would just smack that wall as hard as possible.
I wrote down that he hogwarded that bitch. So I'm glad we were kind of on the same wavelength there. Oh, this movie is so gay. I loved every second of it.
Me too. To be honest with you. Yeah. It's really an epitome of what Hollywood was in the late 1970s, early 80s. It's just kind of that ridiculous cinema.
This movie is in that weird like bridge era between the expression of the 70s and kind of the installation of the moral majority in the 80s. So like this was like synthy and poppy and like kind of square and like VCR covered that the 70s didn't have. That was more shag carpet. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm making any sense with these metaphors here, but it still felt like you could express yourself. Like the dancers they have in this movie they're going for it. Everybody in this movie is going for it. And not for nothing, it's so well choreographed because the dance numbers are really
yeah, and they give people their time too, because like even some of these just dancers and stuff like that have absolutely nothing to do with the plot, because they can dance really well, they give them their spotlight. You know what I'm saying? Like there's that one guy who is like crawling under the people's legs in the 1940s, 1980s, little things like that they just are like, oh man, this guy is a great dancer, let's really highlight this person. Oh
yeah, and there's like one lady who She's like making out with a circuit board. It's weird.
Or, you know, the cowboy whole segment or whatever, where they do the yeehaw at the end with the Xanadu number.
We'll get to that. That is just an entire like narrative in and of itself.
If we skip over this, we got to talk about the shopping spree.
That was just them trying on outfits. It was really cool. Gene Kelly was just coming out of closets in different bangers of outfits. Like he's got a zoot suit on at one point and he goes tropical with it. Like the first outfit he comes out, he looks like Hopper from Stranger Things. And you're just like, oh my God, he looks like a dad. And then he comes out just dressed to the nines, like a woolly version of Jim Carrey in The Mask. And it just goes up and up from there. Michael Beck and Olivia Newton-John could fucking never.
Yeah, probably not. Sonny and Kira had the chemistry of a brick wall.
And that's why I said that I bought him and Gene Kelly so much more, because they just acted like they liked being in the room with each other. And you didn't really get that with Michael Beck and Olivia Newton-John. It's just like, oh, we're supposed to be together. You're so hot. No, you're so hot.
It just felt weird and out of place. Of course, I mean, you know, I get musicals go to some weird places and are out there, but like you said, it's one thing when they're diegetically singing the Xanadu number. She's actually singing that, and whenever she's in the crazy realm with Zeus, she's singing that. But these numbers that they have where it's more like dance numbers feel weird and out of place. You know, you could cut that entire shopping spree and the movie would probably be better for it.
Well, it's classic stat padding, my friend. It's, again, I likened it to the old studio films. They used to just throw in random crap to get to the hour-and-a-half time limit because they didn't feel like writing actual scripts. They just wanted to churn them out. Like if you ever watch Singing in the Rain, there's an important, like the whole gotta dance portion, it doesn't need it. And that's 10 minutes of the movie. They just wanted to add stuff so they could be like, hey, we got Gene Kelly. We got Olivia Newton-John. We got the Electric Light Orchestra. We got cocaine. We got hookers. Let's go.
Yeah. And there was a lot of cocaine and ecstasy. I feel like it was ecstasy most of all, just because they really had that 1970s Rod Stewart, like lens flare and that light flare. Oh man, it's fantastic. Looked like a Kiss music video.
Dude, again, it back into the 70s, but there was a clear 80s tinge to it.
We're at the point now where we got to talk about when Sonny met Daddy.
Oh my God, dude, it's shrouded in blackness, but he has this kind of blue backlight. And I thought that was like the set, and I thought it was going to be like this bluish realm. No, it's computer graphics in its most like infant stages. And that's the blue screen around him.
Yes, that's the blue screen around him. I noticed that too. And I was laughing so hard at that, you know, because it was graphics at its infancy. So, I mean, we're talking like, you know, Superman level graphics of him flying. And it was ridiculous.
Like Star Wars weren't, but like the production of it anyway, but like 5 years old.
Yeah.
And that was ILM, and ILM did not make this movie.
No, God, no. Yeah. And then, you know, he has to go to Daddy to ask for his woman back. And he's like, it's not fair that she can't be with me. And, you know, he's just kind of like, no, you can't do this. She's already done what she needs to do. And it's just ridiculous. It's like, but Dad.
His whole argument is like, you got other muses. And then like the counter argument was like, yeah, but if she leaves, then everybody else is going to leave. Muses don't grow on trees.
Olivia Newton-John, you know, she's got a great voice. That song did not do her justice, though. I didn't care for it myself. But then before she gets to have her one night, Zeus says something along the lines, which he's arguing with somebody, which they never really mention. He keeps calling her honey. So I assume it's some wife of Zeus. And they're arguing like an old married couple. He ends up saying something along the lines of, it may be for a moment or maybe forever. I forget.
Yeah, because they're trying to play like, oh, they're gods. Time is relative to them, which, yeah, okay. That hasn't been an element of this film the entire time. We haven't been getting timey-wimey. Shut up.
We're at the crux of this whole thing, man, where we get to get the full Xanadu treatment. Gene Kelly kind of starts that whole process with him kind of skating around the Xanadu club. Did you think that Gene Kelly actually skated in this film?
Yeah, he had to. It was 1970. It's like latest would be 79 when they made this. It had to be him. Gene Kelly, he was doing all his dances.
I mean, I guess you're right, but it just seemed like every time that I saw him skating, it was always like the back of the head shot or him like far away and stuff. I'm like, I bet that's another guy.
Oh, I'm not doubting that they did body doubles, but if you like saw his face, he was skating. I like in this film, since we're going into the final act, it's a beautiful mess.
Mm-hmm.
And we go into this place. We previously explored this. It's called Xanadu. They've completely renovated it. It's like half bar, half cocktail lounge, half roller rink. And the first thing I thought when I saw this place, Gene Kelly's darting around with all these dancers behind him, like Gold member style, when you first meet him, just rolling around with Beyonce. This place would be open 3 years. Because even in the 1980s, where novelty was just the name of the game, would you go to a roller rink club where like you're hammered off like 6 bush lights and you're smoking like 30 cigarettes and you can't help but get nauseous, and then all of a sudden like four roller skaters bumble into you? Like, that's not a good business model.
Well, it wouldn't work anyways, just because that had to have been completely choreographed, because you would have people just stumbling over each other. Honestly, I would love to just see that and be like in a bird's eye and just watch people run into each other. It'd be hilarious.
I give it like a year after like people stop showing up and you start getting like the Russian mafia doing deals there. I give it like 18 months before somebody gets beaten to death with a roller skate.
Well, and then, all the cocaine gets involved and it basically becomes like a Viper Room type scenario, or Rick James hangs out there all the time and slaps some people around.
They hide it in the wheels. They hide the drugs. I'd watch that movie.
That would actually be pretty cool. A roller disco that is an undercover cocaine parlor. Oh my God. We're going to cut that. No, we're going to cut that right now because that just actually sounds like a pretty good idea.
That feels like a B movie we could do. Like if we're working on something that's like a passion project, that just feels like a death proof. Just like, yeah, we shot that over a summer.
That'd be a fun one. Oh God. But if anybody wants to take that one, I guess it's up for grabs. We'll leave it in the podcast. It's fine. We're here at the finale and we get the big Xanadu number, which I'll be honest with you is not my favorite song. And they kind of crux this whole movie around it.
Well, they do the traditional kind of like ABBA, Olivia Newton-John style with Xanadu. Like, it's real funky and real catchy. Then they just take a hard left into like country music.
Yeah, zoot suits and country music and rock and roll, and then just all over the place.
It felt like the executive was like, and then they're gonna have cowboy hats, and then they're gonna look like they came from space, and then they're gonna have big suit jackets, and then they're gonna kiss.
What are we going to have Sonny do? Oh, fuck that guy. He can't do nothing. I mean, we're just going to have him stand around in the corner while Olivia Newton-John sings and Gene Kelly just ran away. We don't fucking know where he went off to. He's over here snorting with us. It's fine.
Gene, stop taking your pants off.
It's sad to note that this was Gene Kelly's last film.
On paper, I would say that this is sad, that this was his last movie. But I think it works. If you ever watch anything Gene Kelly made in the studio system, it very much like his style of filmmaking. It just was in 1980. And that kind of filmmaking didn't work anymore. And they tried to put a modern twist on it. But I do think he was great in it. I loved him in it. So I don't think it's a horrible last turn. It's not like Nicholson's last movie being How Do You Know, I think.
Yeah. Well, and then, Michael Beck went to be in such classics like...
It's like Battle Droids or something.
And then Olivia Newton-John went on to be in...
Well, she had a whole deal with cancer. She became more of a figure than an artist.
That's true. And, don't get me wrong. Who do you really need to work after you've been in one of the biggest musicals of all time, being Grease?
And she also had a tremendous recording career. Don't discount that. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't think I Want to Get Physical had even come out yet. And that's just a walking paycheck.
All right. Well, there's not really much else we can talk about with this film. At least I don't think so.
Not story wise, anyway. There's some trivia.
I guess that brings us to our next segment. It's the end of the flick as we know it,
and I feel fine.
And that's all right by me.
The world's not going to be around for so long, and I'm okay with that.
And now, for the moment you've been waiting for, it's the end of the flick as we know it! No, seriously, get out. Go on. Get. Shoot. In this segment, we like to pull some trivia that we found online. Maybe look at some box office numbers. This, I think, has like a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, something god-awful. But maybe give a voice to the voiceless. Some of those people who actually thought this was a good movie, let's hear them out and just see what they thought about it.
The first thing that comes to mind when I was looking for trivia, this stuck out to me so hard, is that, well, allegedly, Universal Studios canceled press screenings due to lack of confidence in the film. They thought that if they showed it to the press that it would flop, which you're not wrong, but Why? At a certain point in production, I think you know about that.
My person had a different opinion here. This is from La Gremlin. They posted this in July of 2001. No true connoisseur of cheesy movies can die happy without feasting their eyes on the miracle that is Xanadu. There are so many things wrong with this movie, I don't know where to begin, but somehow they all fit together in a final form that is remarkably endearing. It's best to watch it without the vaguest idea of what it's about. But I will say this. It is exactly what Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory would look like if Willy quit the candy business and decided to turn the factory into a disco.
I was about to say, this movie feels like it was made in the Nightmare Tunnel.
Oh man, yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, and that person actually gave this a 10 out of 10. They even said there's so many things wrong with this movie, but they love it, so 10 out of 10. So thank you, La Gremlin.
I respect the astuteness, but I respectfully disagree. I mean, I don't entirely respectfully disagree. I have a lot of fun with this movie. I had a great time.
I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't have a great time. It is something that I wouldn't say spend $8 on it like I did. But if you find it on one day, yeah, man, enjoy it. Smoke a bowl if you have to, and just kick back and enjoy the ride.
That's my favorite thing to do is get a big old bowl and just smoke that sumbitch. Like, just get this big old bowl of the best cereal you can find and just roll through it so fast that like smoke starts coming off the milk. That's what you meant, right?
Yeah, exactly.
My go-to is mini wheats.
Ooh, nice.
Some frosted mini wheats, orange box.
Mine's probably going to be some honeycombs.
Ooh, they still sell those?
Oh yeah, man. We're getting off topic. We got to get this wrapped up here. So on top of all that, some other interesting factoids that I actually came across, and I thought this was pretty interesting. Even though the movie absolutely tanked, the soundtrack was actually an enormous success. The song Magic went #1 on the US pop singles charts. In the UK, the soundtrack album peaked at #2, and the single Xanadu was #1 for 2 weeks in July of 1980. And you know what? I can agree with that because there were some bangers. I mean, there were some times that I found myself like actually jamming along to the music. So I'll give it that. It did have some good music in it.
Oh, the portion where he's skating before platform 9 3/4 that wall, that ELO song, I cannot be bothered to know the name of it. It's a banger. And so is the one during the cartoon. Like they brought their A game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It wasn't any of the music that was bad in it. It was just kind of the execution of the film overall and the storyline, which I mean, I guess is what musicals ultimately suffer from, is because they do focus on the music. So the plot kind of goes to the wayside. And that's the reason why not a lot of musicals stand out as being really good. But whenever they are really good, they do stand out and they get all the praise in the world because it's really hard to incorporate music as like a main theme around a movie. They did the best with what they had.
You heard it here first, folks. Jesse Michael Rodden, anti-musical.
Jesse Michael Rodden. It's Ryan, Dick.
I thought it was Michael.
No, it's Ryan.
It's Ryan?
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, we've known each other for a few years, but it's fine. Yeah.
What's my middle name? Yeah.
How about Dewey?
It's Anthony. It's oh, you go to hell.
For the people out there, it's because of his hair. He looks like Dewey Cox. Anyways,
that's gonna be my Halloween costume. I'm just gonna lean in.
Hey man, might as well. Other than that, I think the last thing we can talk about is the budget for this. I mean, on a budget of $20 million in the box office, it made $22 million. For a film to be successful, you at least need to double what you put into it.
Rarely ever does the marketing budget go into the production budget because that's not technically production. So like you said, the rule of thumb is you need to double your budget to break even.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately it was a flop, even though on paper there was a very narrow profit margin.
Well, let's see. I think we are done for today, man, unless there's anything else that you want to talk about.
I don't think there's anything else left to do except put it on the sour scale, my friend.
Oh, yes, the good old sour scale. So this is where it needs a little bit of explanation, seeing as though it is our first time doing the podcast. The sour scale for us is going to be our ranking for the worst film nominated for the Golden Razzie. And we've got 9 more movies that we need to watch for that year. Once we get done with the films, we'll consider them for our ranking and maybe move them around each episode, just depending on how bad this movie is versus this one. But we're going to create our own top 10 of the worst films for that year and discuss who was the winner of the Golden Raspberry. And in our eyes, did they deserve it? Or was there another movie on this list that, no, man, this is the one right here that was the absolute worst. It was a snooze fest. I absolutely hated it. For this one, we're just starting the sour scale, and I'm gonna have to put this one right in the middle. I'm gonna put this one at a number 5 on the sour scale to start out with. It's gonna be right in the middle. It's gonna be my proving ground for any other film that we have coming up, if it's gonna be above or below this one. So that's where I'm gonna set it on the sour scale. That's gonna be my starting point, probably from here until the end of time. I'm just gonna put it at number 5.
All right. And number 1 is worst or best?
Number 1 is going to be the worst. Number 10 is going to be the best.
I will adjust my ranking surely as the course of this goes on. But from what I contemplate to be a bad movie, I'm going to pop it at number 10. I quite enjoyed it.
Oh, okay. All right. We're starting it off high. I like it. I
like this movie.
Well, all right. Before we get going for today, I guess it's time for our last segment called Plugs, Not Drugs. Man, fuck these drugs. I think it's time we spread some plugs. You got those plugs? Hey man, let me get some of them plugs. I'd sell you this baby for a plug. In this segment, we just talk about different things that we have coming up, maybe some different movies that we have coming up on the podcast, as well as what we got going on in our personal lives. Kieran, I'll let you start off, man. Is there anything that you want to plug?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and plug my band Radio War, RADIOWORE, because WAR was taken by an 06 emo band, and we didn't want to get sued no matter how small the window of opportunity for that was. So if you'll check us out on all socials under that. I'm not really on anything but Twitter. I run a second podcast occasionally now called Card Marks, which is about pro wrestling, which is a little bit more niche, but feel free to check it out nonetheless. Other than that, I have a joint business venture with Jesse that I'm sure he's going to tell you about. I'm going to flip it back over to you, my friend.
Yeah, I have a couple things to plug, including our podcast here. This is our first ever episode, and I hope you really enjoyed it. Our next episode that we have coming up is for a 1980. I don't know if I would necessarily call it a classic, but it is the movie Windows. It was actually directed by the guy who was the cinematographer on The Godfather. So we'll get to see if being a cinematographer can make you a good director. So it'll be interesting.
I'm not going to spoil anything to come, but this cat also did like a lot of Woody Allen movies. So there's that.
Yeah, you could take that for what it's worth. On top of that, me and Kieran have a short film that is in film festivals right now. We got accepted to our 5th film festival. It's going to be the Cannes Shorts Film Festival. Our film is called Daddy's Girl. It has been out for about a year now, and it's kind of on its last stretch of its festival run. And we're hoping that at some point we can release it online to the public. We'll see how that goes.
And before you ask, it's not a porno.
It does have a porno-ish name, but no, it is not a porno. It's actually a horror movie about a little demon girl. So if you like those type of horror films, it is right up your alley. 6-minute short film. We will let you know more about that when we are able to release it online. On top of that, me and Kieran are working on our next project. We have a project we call Campfire Cravings. It is about a group of friends who go camping where they end up running into a gentleman who is trying to eat them. It's kind of a ridiculous horror comedy. It's going to be a lot of fun. You can find out more information about that by going to our GoFundMe campaign. It is at gofundme.com/Campfire Cravings, or you can also find it on the website, www.roddenreels.com. That's www.roddenreelz.com. We are looking to start filming that in September, October time, and could really use your help just to make sure that we can get everybody paid and everybody fed and all of the props and everything necessary to make this a bloody good adventure. If you guys are interested, please get out there and donate. It would be greatly appreciated.
As the man said, please donate what you can and help us be the music makers. Help us be the dreamer of dreams.
Oh, yeah.
That was douchey. Please still consider donating.
Well, and I don't think there is a better note that we could end on. So thank you everybody for watching this. My name is Jesse Rodden.
My name is Kieran Gibbs.
And that's all the berries worth picking. We'll see you in the fields next week. Bye for now. You've been listening to Raspberry Fields Forever, a Rodden Reels podcast. Available on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you receive your podcast. You can go to the website www.roddenreels.com for even more content. Thanks for listening.